Hello and welcome to the 2020 physics slash conceptual physics school year. The purpose of this video is to go over our syllabus together. And, for the intensive rules and things, physics and conceptual physics operate under the same rules. If you're peeking all over the screen here, you'll also notice that there's another document we'll talk about as well, and that's our e-learning. And the reason we'll do that is because the world of online learning we learned in the spring was very different. But here we go with just our regular syllabus first. This first paragraph, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but it talks about how getting through physics works a lot on mutual respect and hard work and following the rules of both our classroom and the student handbook. Let's talk about physics itself right here. Physics is the fundamental science of the natural world. The course involves study of laboratory work, problem solving, demonstrations, and measurements, kinematics, dynamics, vectors, work, energy, waves, and electricity. That right there, that short statement of words is our whole year. We'll spend a lot of time doing things. The beginning, we start with measurements. That's very short usually. But kinematics is the first quarter. We'll study both one-dimensional and two-dimensional motion. Dynamics we'll get into shortly after that, where we talk about forces. Vectors goes in with kinematics. Work and energy will happen with the dynamics there in the second quarter. In the third quarter, we get into the ideas of momentum, and we get into circular motion, and then we'll begin talking about electricity. And electricity, it sounds very simple, but we start talking about things like electrons and end up talking about circuits. And if there's time after that, we can study how light and sound move and things like that too. And yes, there is a mathematical treatment of things. Math makes it all make sense. Let's talk about materials. You need to be able to write. Pencil is number one choice. If you're a perfect person, never make mistakes, go ahead and use a pen. Calculators are extremely beneficial. If you're in regular physics, it's a must. If you're in conceptual physics, if your math class does not require a calculator, don't worry about bringing one necessarily. If you need to borrow one, we can do them. They're not fancy, but it's a calculator. Paper and paper containment, either a binder with loose leaf or a notebook and a folder. In my opinion, the 5-subject notebook is the enemy of the unorganized student. You might get it thinking you're being organized, but in reality, you're going to end up putting your Spanish, math, and science all in the same spot, and you're not going to find anything. The single subject notebooks are a dime, and you can organize very nicely. Oh, I need the green one for this class and whatnot. But you need to have paper, and you need to have something to hold paper. This year, we probably will do a lot of stuff through computer, but you're still going to need to use paper for this and that. Let's talk about homework. Homework is probably one of the biggest keys in this whole deal. And I work on a 4-point scale. And I look at it, oh, you have half of it, so it's 2 points, that kind of thing. Sometimes we'll do double and triple size homeworks. If it's a really big assignment, I'm going to reward you for that extra effort you had to put into it. Things like, oh, golly, quizzes would be like a 10-point. Labs are more. Tests on average for regular physics are 50 to 60 points. In conceptual physics, a lot of the tests are down towards the 30-point range. Just we work the test differently. And then projects range in points depending on how much time we put in them. If it's like a one-day project, it's going to be a very small amount of points. If we spend 3 weeks on it, it's going to be worth a lot more points. And extra credit is not a common thing at all. We don't do a lot of extra credit. So if you're given an opportunity, you want to jump on it. Let's talk about attendance. Of course, attendance to school is mandatory. And I know in the COVID world that we're living in, you might miss some school, whether you're sick or if you're just being quarantined. And that's understandable, but you still have to do the things that we say as a school, what the school rules are for attendance. And that's popping in on the online class. That's your attendance. You've got to be there. Truancy is nothing to mess with. And I know a lot of kids kind of skate by freshman, sophomore year, then junior year, all of a sudden, oh, I'm actually truant. Tardiness is also important. I know we're going to have a lot of time in the hallways to get to class. There's no reason at all to not be in class on time. And then if you start having a lot of tardies, we're going to start writing detentions. And first period, of course, then you're talking about not tardiness, but not being at school. So homework. What's this deal about homework anyway? Well, all assignments are due at the beginning of the following class unless you're told otherwise. Pay attention to due dates. We're going to use Google Classroom a lot. And using Google Classroom, we will be able to dictate when some things are due and when they're not due. And it also might be a situation where I say homework is due tomorrow, but I give you the chance to have it turned in on Google Classroom at a later time. Homework has importance. If I give you an assignment, it's to teach you something. It's to practice something. We don't do assignments just because in here. We do assignments because they help you. So they're an important part of the learning process. Homework. If it's due the day I say it's due, if you don't have it when I check it, you're late. Now, here's the magical number right there. You turn it in after that, it's half credit. And you have to ask yourself, out of 4 points, half is 2. Is 2 better than 0? And the answer is yes. People who let 0 sit in the grade book tend to have some issues. Make sure you turn your homework in. Cheating and copying are very different than each other. If 2 people sit and talk about a problem, hey, how'd you do this? And then the person shows them, well, this is how you do it. You take this and this and this and you multiply here. That's not cheating. That's working together. One person is reinforcing their learning by helping. The other person is learning it by getting help. Copying is, hey, what did you get for number 1? And you write it down. That's nothing. You don't get anything out of it. It's also cheating, and cheating is unacceptable. Planners are amazing. Try to use a planner. It will make you stay more organized. Grades will be updated on a regular basis, and if you need help, you need to seek out help immediately. And not immediately meaning during problem number 1, meaning with that assignment, if you struggled, ask for help. This class is similar to a math class in a lot of ways, that if you fall behind, you might stay behind and you might not get caught up because it starts to feel like more and more and more. If you wait till chapter 5 to start asking for help, yeah, we'll get you the help you need, but it's going to be a lot harder. During a given chapter, it is so much easier to spend 5 minutes getting help than it is to wait till the end of a chapter and need half an hour or longer to get that help because you're trying to absorb too much. It's so much easier to get help early on. Do not let it sit and fester. Hall passes. We are not going to be out in the hallway this year. Okay? Do not ask to just go out in the hall to meet your friends or whatever to get a little drink because your throat's a little dry. You'll be okay. I promise you. You can make it 40 minutes without a drink of water. You'll live. You'll sign out. Okay, let's talk about these procedural rules. These are the simple things you've been doing since kindergarten. Bring your stuff, have your work done, raise your hand, come to class on time, you're ready to go. Get your maintenance work out of the way during appropriate times. If I'm like in the middle of something, don't interrupt me to ask about a pencil. Okay? Just take care of things at appropriate times. Behavioral rules, and these might be the most important rules in your whole life. Show respect to everyone else. Be positive about stuff. Be nice to people. It's really easy to just not say something rude. Just don't say it. Listen to what other folks have to say. I see a lot of times in group work where one person dominates all the conversation because they don't listen to other people. So listen to what other people have to say. And then follow directions from Mr. Wolf immediately. If I tell you to do something, that means do it. That means you need to do it. Now, I'm a loud person. You'll find that my room is very big and my voice is very good at filling the room. What I don't do very often is actually yell. My children know my dad voice very well. And when my dad voice comes out, you'll know. Like, there'll be no question about it. If that voice is being used, something is very wrong. I have seen where a student isn't thinking about what they're doing and they're about to cause an injury to themselves or someone else. And if I'm getting loud, you should probably just stop what you're doing, because maybe I'm trying to prevent you from getting hurt, because nobody wants that. Personal technology. Now, this whole big deal basically says get off your phone unless it's something I say you should use it for. It is not, your phone is not an everyday calculator, nor is it acceptable for social media, gaming, texting, or other leisure activities in class. Folks, you will live without listening to your music in class. You will live without Instagram. You'll live without TikTok. You'll live without all those things. And I know, having gone from March to basically September, where you haven't had maybe someone telling you not to do that stuff, you'll get over it. Just put it aside. Pay attention to what we're doing in class. And yeah, we'll confiscate it. Let's talk about the ladder of discipline. It's pretty easy. Step one is detentions and getting stopped by Mr. Wolf. Office detentions, office referrals. I don't think we really want to go see Mr. Slobodnik and Mr. Vassal. Removal from class, it's pretty severe, but it can happen. Permanent removal from class, I guess, the harbor could be somewhere up in here. So we don't really want to do this, but that's up to you. Acknowledgement. Normally you have that sign and return page. We're doing that online this year on a Google form in Google Classroom. So take a look for that. So here's the sign and stuff. But here's a couple of things that I added in. We had a major problem with cheating a couple years back, and we all added these little nuggets. If you're caught cheating on homework or tests, you'll be disciplined to the fullest extent according to the student handbook. On a test, I'm willing to bet you can do better than 0. Just keep that in mind when you think you want to cheat off somebody else. And cell phones are not to be out during class. I don't know if we'll be collecting this year, but they're not to be out during class. And parents, please don't send your kids messages that's going to get them in trouble during class. Like, your kid's in schools, don't send them messages, because you don't want to have to come to the office to retrieve. So that's the normal syllabus, but then I came up with these other e-learning things. And by the time you look at this, I might have added to it already. This is a living document here. So the spring of 2020, it did teach us a lot of things. So as we go through the 2021 school year, we might need to make some changes. Let's start with communication. Students, make sure you're communicating with me, Mr. Wolf, through Google Classroom. And you can throw a private comment onto an assignment if it's about that assignment. Other kind of things, students, email me at the Wolf C AL student email, or use Remind. Parents, please communicate with me through our traditional email that we use as staff members. The difference is the AL student email is for classroom communication, and the Avon Lake City Schools email is for, office communications. Emails work best when the subject is clearly stated. Sometimes I get very vague and confusing emails, and then we have to send extra emails. So be very clear about things. If it's about a specific assignment, that would make a very good subject. In emails with parents, it's extremely important you put your name on the email, because some of your email addresses don't match up with your kid in any way, and I'm left thinking, who is Boat Guy 72? Okay. Also, identify yourself as the sender, because some of the student names don't match up with the parent names. That's just how it is. Students need to remember that communications with the teacher are different than text messages. Sometimes we get way too informal and borderline inappropriate. So let's just watch that. Think of it as you're writing yourself a letter. Communicate often. Letting confusion build up causes more stress and anxiety. We don't want that to happen. Let's talk about assignments. In the e-classroom, we'll be using Google Classroom extensively. We're basically going to live in Google Classroom. So check it for daily updates, assignments, meetings, and other communications. We'll have assignments using things like Edpuzzle. We'll have book problems. We'll have activities. We'll have projects. It's extremely important that you get accustomed to hitting the turn in button at the end of an assignment that notifies me that it's been graded. That was the biggest issue we had all last year was people like, well, I did the homework. Well, did you hit turn in to let me know that you did it? Okay. If I specify that an assignment needs to be handwritten and scanned, we're going to do that sometimes. There are going to be some things that are much better handwritten, especially when we're doing physics problems. It's going to be much better to handwrite them. The Notes app in your Apple or the app Adobe Scan, I think you can use it for Apple and Android, are great for scanning work and turning it in as a PDF. But when it comes to assignments, the most important thing to do is stay involved. Falling behind is one of the biggest things you get into. This spring, I had kids who really fell behind, and then all of a sudden they're trying to dig their way out when there's 2 weeks left in the quarter. And that was just, it was terrible. It was a lot of stress on your end and on my end. So don't fall behind. Meetings. To begin the school year, we're going to use both Zoom and Google Meets because they're constantly updating and changing. And what if we like one and then it changes? What if we don't like it then? So we'll see what happens as the year goes on. There is an expectation of daily contact. Expect a live meeting during your regular scheduled class period. This way there can be no conflicts. Failure to log on will count as absence. During these meetings, please keep in mind the background of your room. I'm not asking for anything special, but keep things appropriate is important. Sometimes we have things in our bedrooms that maybe shouldn't be on a Zoom, okay? And if you're in your bedroom or whatever. Attire is also quite important. You don't have to wear a suit, but school appropriate is required. You don't have to be fancy. I know my children are staying home, and we told them you're not just going to wear pajamas every day. You're going to actually put on clothing to go to school. I'll make an effort to record meetings. Just as in a regular classroom, students are not to make recordings of Mr. Rolf or other members of the class. There are actually legalities involved here. You are actually going against people's constitutional rights if you're recording them in this manner. It's not okay. It's safety in non-compliance will not be tolerated. During these meetings, students may be muted, but videos do need to be on. If you have something to say, turn on the mic. Otherwise, let's not do that. But I do want your video on because I don't want you to think that you're completely hiding and maybe, I don't know, even sleeping during class. So you got to have the video on, but you don't have to have the mic on unless you're talking. That's all I have for now. I got a feeling as this week goes on, I'm recording this on Monday the 24th. As this week goes on, I will probably find more and more things to add to this. So please, when you are reading the actual paper, make sure you're looking for those changes. All right, thank you.